In the early 19th century, the African continent was a stage for fierce conflicts between colonial powers. One such battle, the Battle of Nsamankow, would leave an indelible mark on the history of Ghana. Our journey takes us to the Gold Coast, present-day Ghana, in the year 1824. The British Empire, driven by its expansionist agenda, found itself at odds with the powerful Ashanti Kingdom and its formidable leader, King Osei Bonsu. The Ashanti Kingdom, renowned for its military prowess, had a disciplined and well-organized army, led by experienced commanders. They were determined to repel the encroaching British forces and safeguard their ancestral lands. During the 18th century, the Ashanti became the ascendant nation in the region of the Volta River, or modern-day Ghana, and extending west into present-day Ivory Coast. Access to the coast and control of coastal trade was a source of continued conflict with the Fante city-states along the coast. The Fante people, who were a coastal people in the region that is now Ghana, were sometimes aligned with the British against the Ashanti Empire. Eventually, the Ashantis became so powerful that they started attacking and raiding coastal towns and forts, taking slaves and spoils of war. In the guise of protecting the Fantes from the Ashantis, the British sought to control the trade routes of the coastal region and at the same time stifle trade between the Ashanti and the Portuguese, who were trading in textiles, firearms, and other commodities. There was a narrative misdirection that the British were in the Ashanti lands to effectively end the slave trade, which was a large source of revenue for the Ashantis, who had an extremely large prisoner of war population. The British vacillated for years on the best course of action against the Ashantis. In late 1823, following disagreements between the Fante and the Ashantis, the British declared war on the king of the Ashanti. The catalyst for the Battle of Nsamankow was a disputed border town. The British sought to extend their influence, while the Ashanti fiercely defended their sovereignty. As diplomatic efforts faltered, both sides prepared for a conflict that would reshape the fate of the region. On one side stood the Ashanti forces led by their charismatic leader, King Osei Bonsu, a master tactician. The British, on the other hand, were under the command of Sir Charles McCarthy, a seasoned officer with a reputation for assertiveness. Before taking up the role as the governorship and military command in the Gold Coast, Sir Charles McCarthy had served in various military campaigns. Some of the notable conflicts he was involved in include the Peninsular War in Spain, where British forces were fighting against Napoleon's forces. Additionally, McCarthy participated in military actions in the West Indies. Born on July 14, 1764, his military experience played a significant role as governor during the Anglo-Ashanti Wars. He has often been portrayed as a capable and determined military leader. His actions during conflicts suggest qualities of strategic thinking and leadership. In late 1823, after organizing the defenses of Cape Coast, McCarthy set out with an expedition of some 80 men of the Royal African Colonial Corps, 170 men of the Cape Coast Militia, and 240 Fante tribesmen under their local chiefs. He was accompanied by a captain and an ensign of the 2nd West India Regiment as aide-de-camp, a surgeon of the same regiment, and J.T. Williams, his colonial secretary. However, this was not the only part of his force. 3 other groups of infantry were in the region, one of 600 regulars of the Royal African Colonial Corps and 3,000 native levies, and one of 100 regulars and militia and 2,000 levies, under Major Alexander Gordon-Lying, a Scottish explorer and military officer, and a third of 300 regulars and militia and 6,000 levies. The plan was for the 4 groups to converge and then engage the enemy with overwhelming force, which never happened. During the colonial era in Africa in the early 19th century, native levies were local African troops or soldiers who were recruited or conscripted by the British colonial powers to serve in their military forces. These levies were often used by European powers to supplement their own forces or to maintain control over their African colonies. The term native levies was used to distinguish these troops from regular European troops. The native levies were provided with uniforms that were similar to those worn by the colonial forces. However, the uniforms might have been simplified versions or adapted to suit local conditions. The use of uniforms helped to distinguish the native levies from other local forces and civilians, and it also served to instill a sense of identity and discipline among the troops. The British, armed with superior weaponry and a thirst for territorial expansion, set their sights on the Ashanti-controlled Nsamankow village. Little did they know that the Ashanti warriors were prepared to fight fiercely to protect their land and heritage. When the news reached the Ashanti capital Kumasi that the British were on the march into Ashanti territory, their king Ashanti Osei Bonsu quickly mobilized 10,000 Ashanti warriors. Judging by the military prowess and organization of the Ashantis, it wouldn't take more than a few days to mobilize such number of warriors or more by the Ashanti. Ashanti Osei Bonsu was a prominent ruler of the Ashanti Empire during the 19th century. He ascended to the throne as the Ashanti King in 1801 and played a significant role during a crucial period in Ashanti history. Osei Bonsu's reign coincided with the Ashanti-British conflicts known as the Anglo-Ashanti Wars. He was known for his military prowess and leadership. His strategic acumen were legendary. Beyond military matters, Osei Bonsu was influential in Ashanti politics. He sought to consolidate and strengthen the Ashanti Empire during a time of external pressures. Understanding Osei Bonsu's role in the context of Ashanti history involves considering the broader political, military and diplomatic challenges faced by the Ashanti Empire during the 19th century. He was up against a more ruthless and superior military power. On January 15, 1824, a large contingent of the Ashanti army marched towards Nsamankow, led by Ashanti Osei Bonsu himself. It took the British contingents about 3 weeks of marching through treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather to reach the outskirts of Nsamankow. At this point, McCarthy's men were already super exhausted. The thought of the distance that separated them from their base must have been demoralizing. McCarthy's planning was bad, and therefore so was his logistical supply in mostly swamp and jungle conditions with seemingly ceaseless downpours. On the night of the 20th of January, still without having joined forces with the other 3 groups, McCarthy's force camped by a tributary of the Pra River. The next day, the clash of cultures and ideologies was brought to the forefront. At around 2 p.m., the British encountered a large Ashanti force of around 10,000 men strong. The Ashantis, adorning colourful and intricately woven kente fabric, with various ornaments including gold jewellery, headgear with feathers, face covered in body paints, leather war charms, armed with traditional swords, spears and firearms. They were an imposing sight. Believing that the Ashanti army contained several disaffected groups whose chiefs were willing to defect, McCarthy instructed the band to play God Save the King loudly. The Ashanti responded by approaching closer, beating war drums, and his beliefs were swiftly dispelled. As the opposing forces converged on the plains of Nsamankow, separated by a 20 meters wide stream, the battle lines were drawn and the fate of the region hung in the balance. So confident was the king of the Ashantis that he prophesied that soon he would defeat the British and that McCarthy's jawbones would be used as drumsticks and his skull as a drinking cup. The Ashanti warriors began to make their way to cross the open river toward the opposite side. The British opened fire. So the battle began. Ashanti warriors, adorned in vibrant regalia, faced the disciplined ranks of the British redcoats. The battle was a symphony of musket fire and war cries, testing the mettle of both sides. Hundreds of Ashanti troops were cut down by the British bullets and cannonballs as they tried to cross the exposed river. Many drowned as a result of their bullet wounds. The British forces were lightly supplied after long hours of intense shooting. 4 cases of supplies arrived. The first was opened and the shots inside was distributed, but the other 3 were found to contain only macaroni. McCarthy was livid. He almost shot the officer that brought the supply out of rage. The British army were quickly running out of ammunition. The Ashanti kept advancing. They were there to either kill or be killed. They came prepared. The closer the Ashantis got, the Fantes did what no one expected them to do in such a hopeless situation: run. The Fantes deserted McCarthy at the battlefield and fled to all corners. As the battle unfolded, unforeseen circumstances shifted the course of history. Key strategic decisions and unforeseen events led to a turning point, altering the dynamics of the conflict. The British guns suddenly fell silent. The Ashantis held back, thinking the silence was a British ploy. Then it gradually dawned on them: the British had run out of ammunition. The Ashantis quickly advanced across the river. Most of the Fante militia had already fled at this point. If I was there, I would have ran away from there as quickly as the Fantes did. When the Ashantis made it across the stream in large numbers, the British bayonets came out, slashing through the sea of black skins. The gallant British little force defended themselves courageously. They were no match. The British forces were grossly outnumbered and were overwhelmed in hand-to-hand combat. They were completely overpowered by the myriads who instantly beheaded nearly every one of those who unfortunately fell into their remorseless hands. McCarthy, along with his secretary J.T. Williams, attempted to fall back, but was cut down by an Ashanti's gunfire. Lying on the ground wounded, McCarthy was shot the second time. He died instantly. McCarthy's death brought the battle to an end. The feeling of the Ashantis after defeating the British at Nsamankow was one of immense pride, jubilation, and a sense of victory against a powerful colonial force. They felt a deep sense of accomplishment, having successfully defended their territory and people against a superior military adversary. The victory bolstered their morale and reinforced their belief in their ability to resist colonial encroachment on their land. The British encampment was razed to the ground. For reasons best known to them, the Ashantis decided to take few prisoners, including J.T. Williams. They were held prisoner for several months. On his return, J.T. Williams related that he had only survived through being recognized by an Ashanti chief, for whom he had done a small favor, and was spared. McCarthy's gold-rimmed skull was later used as a drinking cup by the Ashanti rulers, just like Ashanti King Osei Bonsu had vowed he will do. Sir Charles McCarthy made strategic mistakes during the battle, contributing to the British defeat. The decision to engage in open battle and the positioning of forces are aspects that have been scrutinized. However, historical assessments can vary, and hindsight plays a role in such evaluations. It's important to consider the complexities and challenges McCarthy faced during a period of geopolitical tension and warfare.
Please don't forget to click subscribe and like to get notifications from our channel.